folks. So it is Thursday, September the 8th, 2022. I know we're competing with the football game. The football season has started. So now it's exciting. Not going to lie. It's going to be interesting. It did give me a good reminder, though, tonight. I usually have around here, we don't really have the streaming NFL package anymore, but we do have DAZN, which does the NFL streaming. So I usually pick that one up. So I've reinstituted my DAZN subscription. So I've been watching some of those games going on. First comment of the day goes to Bubblegum Cardboard Collectibles. I'm here for the Meister Fresh West and Master P ticket giveaway. Live the dream, buddy. Live the dream. I like to use the emoji too. So a couple of interesting things. Not exactly that we planned it out this way, but we do have a fun little announcement. Obviously, the PSA released out, so we'll talk about that in a moment, just to get everybody up to speed on where that falls. And the other piece of the puzzle that we'll go into, as I mentioned, every video we do read the questions in the comments. So we'll do that, and I'm going to touch on a couple that came in the last hour as well. So they're pretty recent. Good evening, Eric. Absolutely. So let's touch on a couple of these here. So this is Christian Wiggins. Two questions here from the from the August 25th episode. So I do have the comments on here, so we'll get to them. And afterwards, I think we'll go back after and answer them in the comment as well. So first question was, so will the PSA website eventually just have a Canadian website that provides us with a Canadian address to send a submission to directly? So there is a Canadian address to send it to directly, but do you want to kind of elaborate on that piece there, Brett?
Yeah, so lots of things have been in the works over the course of the last year, but they've really amped up over the course of the last 2 weeks. We're trying to figure out exactly what we're going to do for the future. I'm working directly with a gentleman named Ryan Miller, who is head of, I guess, he was with WADA under the collector's umbrella. Now he is head of international business development and expansion. So I've been working with him. We have a weekly Zoom call, and we've been brainstorming for this will be our third one coming up this Tuesday. So now it was getting a lot of our ideas together, putting it on paper, trying to figure out how we're best going to tackle the Canadian market in the future. So it's been very interesting. So we really have some great stuff coming down the pipeline.
Absolutely. And I did mention, it's funny because I mentioned this to Brad, because like we mentioned before, PSA Canada is a separate company from PSA, Collectors PSA at the moment. As it presently stands in as we speak, they are two separate entities. So I actually told Brad the PSA Canada podcast had an episode that came out hours ago, and it was talking about the bulk rate pricing, which I'll talk about in a minute. I know Peter Collect had a comment about that. I'll get to it in just a second. And the other piece of the puzzle is that Kevin Lenane was on it, talking about various things, including, it's only about 20 minutes long, so if you get a chance, check it out. He had some interesting comments on international expansion and international offices for PSA. He focused on PSA Japan, specifically some things about it, but he did make references to other countries, including one that we may be in. So it's just coming from him as, basically projecting to the future, not specifically promising anything, but he did make some references to international and talked about that a little bit. A very interesting conversation. So I would put that out there as, that's on their podcast. So just something to let you guys know. So second question, so also from Christian, related to it kind of. Do we know if PSA will eventually open a grading office or closer to it within Canada? It kind of plays a little bit into what you just said as well, but kind of two-pronged question there.
Yeah, exactly. A grading facility here is something that we've talked about many times, and I think Japan is obviously right now, that's their number one to get that up and running as fast as they can. And with the New Jersey expansion, I think it's definitely on the radar to have that. I don't want to get into too many details or speak out of place when I say what they're planning on doing. The one thing that we have talked about extensively is have on-site grading at the Sports Card Expo. That is something that I've advocated for from the very beginning. I think that would enable us to really help grow PSA across the country by having that, even if it's once a year or twice a year at both shows. We've talked with Steve Menzie about it, and things are in the works on that. It's not going to happen this year, but I could see that happening in 2023. And that would be very, very exciting. That would be a big step for PSA in the Canadian market, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it would be instantaneous revenue as well. It would be right, because people are interested in submitting, and they would just feel just a little bit more comfortable being able to do it right away and having their stuff back within the same show. I could see that definitely being appealing to some folks, because there's always pricing for on-site grading. It's always a premium pricing. But at the same time, the comfort, especially for some of the higher end items, somebody could walk right up, some of those more expensive cards and be able to get it back in the same show. that would be very appealing to some and maybe motivate them to get some of those cards in holders. So it's
Yeah,
something definitely to think about.
yeah,
So
I'm already
people,
doing that too. And you right now, I shouldn't say booking, but for the Chicago National, people that reach out to me that aren't comfortable with shipping, they're just not going to do it. And I recommend if you're not comfortable with shipping your card, it's going to be away from your possession. Even if you at one of the high level premium or walkthrough service, it's going to be gone for 3, 4, or 5 weeks. So if you're not comfortable in doing that, just wait. Go to the National. And this year in Atlantic City, I met with 15 to 20 different people from Canada that flew down to get cards graded. That we walked up to the booth, we helped with the submission form, and they did it on their own. So it was good.
absolutely. Ink Paper Wax Collector, good evening. Absolutely. Good evening to you. Yannick, good evening. Good evening, fellas. And Cherry, well done. Got to make sure to include that. By the way, we talked about it already in the previous. If you have any submissions, like if any of you who are newer to this, two things. Number one, we ask that you hit the like button. It is free. And secondly, we recommend that we also would love if you would subscribe. I am getting dangerously close to that 100 subscriptions. That's what I wanted first, and we're getting dangerously close to it. I would love to get to it very in short order. We're getting there. Secondly, if you do have any submissions out with PSA Canada and you'd like a status update on where you're at, you can certainly put it in the chat. And Sherry is monitoring that and can kind of give you an update and direct it in your direction. CC, good evening as well. And Hockey Barn Collectives. When does PSA Canada Graders training classes start? So Brad, when are you delivering the training classes?
Yeah, exactly. I would actually like to go through that process, to tell you the truth myself.
Mm-hmm. It would
We
be
all,
interesting.
I think a lot of us, we as a long time submitter, we all think we are. Now it's we think we're all professional graders and we have that great eye. And again, it would be very interesting to actually go through some sort of a training class. And I think that's one of the things as we learn more, and even with this podcast, is the more things that I learn, the more things that we can talk about on here, then that's just going to help us all be better at submitting cards. So.
Absolutely. And as we go through this, we've got a couple of topics we're going to talk about tonight. But as we go through it, if there's anything that you folks in the chat there would like to talk about, feel free to throw it in there. And as I go along, I'll monitor and kind of check it out as we go along. And also give you reminders about the like button. So I will remind you about that as we go forward. So this is sick. Well, I appreciate that. Wave from PSA Canada. Very nice. Rest in peace, QE2. There you go. So, one of the ones that I wanted to talk about was obviously Peter Collect talked about this. It's been over 3 hours in PSA bulk pricing and not a peep from PSA Canada. Has it gone out of business? Yes. This is all a cleverly phased facade, Peter, and you've keyed in on it. So, it happens sometimes. But let's talk about the PSA bulk pricing because PSA did announce it. So in the States, it is $22 and it is $199 declared value. So obviously that is not like a special. That is them restoring the bulk services. Right now it's for collectors, for Collectors Club members. And then obviously bulk submitters would be privy to something like that. Do you guys already kind of know what your version of that is going to look like, or is that something still being worked out?
Still being worked out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so currently I don't know. So hopefully by tomorrow I'll have that solidified. Mm-hmm. And it's hard. Like we also run a fine line that how we do things. We have our large submitters. We have our large group submitters across the country. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, I have to be very cognizant of their business when I do things in sequence. So it's not like I can just run out and say, okay, here's what our price is going to be, and this is what we're going to do. Yeah, I have to work with all these guys because they work directly with me, and we're building a team across the country. And like I mentioned, I think I mentioned on one of the podcasts earlier, mm-hmm. The team that we have kind of in place. Like we have Luke in Western Canada now. We have Kevin Douglas in Ontario. We have Pascal, who's been doing an amazing job in Quebec. And then I'm kind of on the East Coast. So we have lots of other submitters that use our services as well. But this is kind of the team we've assembled over the last year and a half, and guys that I've worked closely with, and guys that frankly submit an absolute ton of cards. They're well respected, and they've been great partners of mine, that's for sure. So I think in fairness to all them guys, I have to make sure I protect them and protect their business before I do anything specifically. So
mm-hmm. Sure. No, that makes sense. Now it also plays into one other thing, because I said right now for the US one, the announcement, because it's announced, so I'm just repeating what's already out there. So it is $22, but it is $199 declared value. And that kind of leads me into the conversation. So I wanted to bring it up. And if you got any questions about that we can't answer, feel free to ask them and we can give opinions and all that as well. So that's perfectly fine. But one thing I wanted to bring up as a result of that, and the timing could not have worked out more beautifully because I had that topic earlier today before the announcement even came out. So I literally I threw it kind of Brad's way for him to think about a little bit. And what I wanted to talk about is something that he normally encounters at the shows. So when they're at the shows, it's one thing if somebody knows exactly what they're doing. It's one thing if they know, hey, I want to submit these cards. These are how many cards I want to submit. I want it at these levels, this, that, and the other thing. But it's also different if you are going in a situation where you've got some cards and you're trying to figure out, should I submit? Is this the right time? Should I wait? Because before some of these lower price levels started becoming available, and I'm very confident we will get some lower price levels even from here. So it's one of those things where somebody may be asking themselves the question, okay, so is this the time? Is this the right price point? Is this the right, because it's up to $199 and there is a little bit of grace. If it's a $210 card, you're not going to necessarily get killed for it. You've got a little bit of latitude there within reason. But at the same time, maybe it's a card that you've got that would be like a $50 or $60 card. Would that be worth it to you? And there are scenarios where you could make that argument. And that's kind of what I want to talk through with you a little bit, because that's something that people really have to think about when they come to your booth and present you some cards. Let me read a couple of these comments and we'll get into that. KD Collectibles says, hey guys, hey KD Collectibles. Jeff here, good evening. Are you guys looking at having affiliate submitters in brick and mortar card shops? I'm asking on behalf of Game Breakers in Ottawa. So there you go. Very specific.
Yeah. No, yeah, we definitely are. I mean, we're happy to take cards from everyone across the country. It's very hard to get more people set up, and everyone thinks there's a lot of meat on the bones when it comes to, to bulk submitter or group submitter pricing, but it's not. Quite frankly, it's not as lucrative as the perception out there, especially as PSA controls things. Things are tighter and tighter. So, on this new rate, if at the end of the day, if group submitters are making $1 a card, then I that's probably going to be in that range. That's what I would think. So you can see people's perception when you actually look at the bottom line. It's a lot of work that goes into it for small margins. So
yeah, and the important thing to note here is that's kind of across the industry, because I can say, knowing some people that bulk submit with SGC, knowing some people that bulk submit with CSG. So it's not like one, it's just not just one, it's whatever price you see there. And this is important because when somebody's a bulk submitter, you're going to look at their price, right? And then, just to be clear, you could, as an individual, go get yourself a Collectors Club membership for $99 US, and then you could submit right now at $22 US per card. Now do the translation, do everything else. What PSA Canada's offering is that they include a lot of these other things, and you can see what the price is in advance. So a lot of that has been worked in. The customs has been built in. The shipping is included as part of it. Taxes are considered. All these things are included in an overall package, so it's easier to figure it out what your pricing is going to be. With exchange rates and all that, if you're doing it in US dollars, then your price today might not be your price tomorrow, even if it's the same price. Let me scroll here. When choosing your declared value, do you recommend basing it on PSA 8, 9, or PSA 10 or raw?
Yeah, I honestly, that's the question that we face most. I always tell people, when you're determining the declared value, you want to make sure that's your insured value as well while that card's in PSA's possession. So you have to be very careful on that front of it. You don't want to go too low, but you want to be safe, and I don't want to see anyone overpay. Mm-hmm. So if you have a card in question, and I always go back to, say, a Gretzky rookie card, if it was in a screw down or there's potential that it could have been altered intentionally or unintentionally, then you want to protect yourself. You don't want to submit that at, say, hey, I think it's worth $4,000. I'm going to submit it at the Super Express level. And then all of a sudden it comes back altered. You're still paying that price at the Super Express level. So what you want to do, I'd say, look, if you're happy, submit it at economy. Put a $9.99, put $1,000 value on it, submit it at the economy level, wait the 90 days. Maybe it comes back sooner. That way you protect yourself. If it comes back as a 5 or a 6 and it's going to get upgraded to that Super Express level, then let PSA bump you up to that level. Because I talk about this with PSA directly all the time. We've had numerous customers that we lost, and we don't want to lose a customer over something simple that can be rectified. Mm-hmm. So if you have a Gretzky rookie and you say, oh, I think it's going to be a 9, I'm going to insure it at $20,000, I'm going to submit it, and it comes back altered, you still pay that $1,500 price tag to grade it. Yeah. So that person gets their card back, they get a bill for $1,500, they never want to use PSA service again. Mm-hmm. They're scorned for life, I guess you could say, when that happens. So it's that fine line on it. So I recommend you have to be comfortable, because always remember, like I said, that's your insured value, but use the raw card value, what they're selling for, and go from that. I mean, if you're submitting a new card, any cards, if you want, you could submit at the economy level, young guns. Like if you felt comfortable, you want to submit your Crosby rookie or Ovechkin rookie, or, McDavid on the high end, Matthews, I guess those are the young guns guys that we see the most upgrades. You can submit them at that economy level, and if they grade 10s, 9s, they'll get bumped up. So
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's to your point. I think it's balancing that line between comfort and also you can be a little bit conservative, because if you end up getting better than you expected, then more than likely, if it bumps up the price enough, like in all honesty, if it bumps it up enough that it goes to another level, there may be an upcharge or there may not be. Like if it's barely over, then more than likely you're still fine. You give yourself a little bit of buffer room to work with. So you try to be within reason. Just give yourself a little buffer just in case. And by the way, it might be a pleasant surprise. Maybe it came off much better than you expected, and well, then you've got yourself quite a valuable card. So maybe then you're more accepting of that charge, as opposed to going for the moon and the stars, paying full rate, and it turns out maybe you're a little disappointed and you got to pay the full price.
Exactly. And one of the other questions that we get a lot when it comes to that is, well, if I submit it lower, the grader's going to think that there's something wrong with it. And I was no, the graders doesn't know what service level the cards are submitted at. Mm-hmm. So there's no bias when it comes to that. So
for sure. Thank you for the question, Josh. Great question. Ryan Daw, happy Thursday. Absolutely. Happy Thursday to you. And from Dustin Dollars making an excellent point here. Thank you for this. Submitting to PSA Canada, there's no minimum. So it's true. You can submit one card and you'd be fine with that. With the Collectors Club, and especially with this new bulk rate, so I'm referencing it since it is the new hotness. It just came out literally today, hours ago. It is a 25 card minimum, but it's also a 25 card minimum for different categories. So they made emphasis to it, and they gave an example on the site. So I think it's 95 and before, 96 to present, et cetera, et cetera. Those would be considered two different categories, and it'd be 25 card minimum for each. Now, the reason I gave that example, though, is in theory, you could, as an individual, set it up, submit it, and go on. As long as you got enough cards, or maybe you pool with some other people, you could totally do it. And it would cut out the middleman. The downside is that you then have to pretty much take on the responsibility yourself. You don't really have the same support categories. That's why I mentioned actually being able to talk to some people, asking questions, getting some answers, getting status updates, and having an advocate has some value. But the margins on that are small, because PSA Canada can't, or like, we're doing all this work. You can't say, oh, the equivalent of 22 US, we want to give ourselves a couple of dollars, and then, all right, jack it up because of all this other stuff. Yeah, it's $55 US equivalent. No, nobody would want to submit at that. Like, it would be terrible. Why would they even think about that? So you can't make the price too high, but that means also you can't leave that much margin in there. So the margins have to be small to not make it a ripoff. But you're still trying to provide value. So you're trying to like balance out the two things.
Yep.
Absolutely. So KKB Collectibles here. Awkward moment where you submit cards at PSA 8 value and you get a 10, and Brad sends you a huge upcharge. It's always worth it with the upcharge. If you're a little conservative and maybe you get lucky, generally speaking, it means better news. So it generally means you have a more valuable card. If you're getting hit with an upcharge, it means your card was worth more than you thought.
Yeah. Yeah, and the upcharges too, like I said, it's a group of guys that work at PSA, and I get an email from them pretty much daily, and we always send some emails back and forth, and they, I'm building a relationship with these guys, and they do their job well. And at that same day, I have questioned certain things. Very seldom do I do it, but I want to make sure that we get it right. I don't want to go back to the customer. We just had a big card that I looked at. It was upgraded to the, what was that, premium 2 level. Mm-hmm. And it was a Connor McDavid card, a PMG. And I was like, what is the price on that? $2,000 US.
Something like that, yeah.
And I looked at the card and I was like, a PSA 8 of this card? Is that really what it's going to? So then I just emailed back, and the last sale of one that was raw was 39 or 35,000. So actually, it could even have been bumped up to the next level. Mm-hmm. But they do it based upon sales as well. It's not like they don't pull numbers out of a hat. It's based on the average of the last consistent sales. Mm-hmm. So they know what these cards sell for, and they look at it and they scan the list and they pull out. So the guys they do a great job, and I appreciate everything they do. And like I said, of the literally thousands of upcharges that I have had over the last couple of years, there's been one or two that I've actually went back and just kind of said, hey, can you explain to me this? And one of them, they were correct. And one of them I still kind of disagree with. It was a very interesting, I understand the logic behind it, but we can tell that story another night. But
Sure, sure. Now, one thing I'll also point out is that the advantage, since they do use some of the information they pull, we talked about the app on the last episode. It does include some sales histories, so it does. So you can leverage that as well to give yourself at least an idea of maybe some of the data they're looking at and some of the data they're potentially pulling from. So you might be able to anticipate that a little bit. So you can use that as a way to kind of help yourself a little bit as well. Again, look at the scenario. So you can say like, oh, if this would be a PSA 8, how much are these going to be going for? If it's a PSA 9, how much are these going for? And it'll give you a little bit of a ballpark idea, at least so that you're already informed ahead of time. So it might not be a complete shocker if something comes back a certain way. So then you'll know a little bit more. Now, one thing I was going to say, and this kind of plays into that as well, was the whole idea of, okay, so you're thinking about whether you want to submit it or not. And one of the key points that I was going to make was, and I do this for my own submissions as well. So like I'm practicing what I'm preaching here. And there are times where it makes sense. And where it makes sense the most is when I'm trying to figure out, first question I ask myself, is this for PC? Or is this a situation where I'm looking at a card where I may potentially flip it? So then the value proposition to you changes. Because if it's for personal collection, well, then you might be a little bit more patient. You might wait until the price point hits something you're comfortable with. So that's one. Or if it's something you're looking at potentially taking advantage of where the market is, this player is on the rise, you want to get it graded to potentially flip it down the road, then you might be a little bit less price sensitive. So that's a major factor you got to consider. So that's number one. After you figure that out, then it's a math problem. This is how much it would cost me to grade it. This is about how long it would take me to get it back. Do I want it back faster at all costs? Then maybe I'll go with a higher level. Then fine, I'll pay the extra. Or it's a situation where I can afford to be patient. Well, then maybe I'll pick the lowest level I can work with here that still fits. So that's kind of how you figure it out. And if the answer is it's too expensive right now, I need to wait. Well, you mentioned, even with this bulk rate, I think we're going to get a couple of dollars less for bulk rate. If you're a set registry person, I have no inside information on this, but it would make all the sense to me in the world that there will be some specials for set registry folks to reward you for your loyalty. And it would not shock me if that's presented. It's like, maybe then be patient. Maybe wait a little bit longer. And that's a situation where like, we're actually turning down business. It's like, no, actually, it might make more sense for you. Save the money. Save a couple of bucks per card. And in the long run, maybe you'll be happier that way.
Yeah, no, 100%. You summed that up perfectly. That's exactly it. And there's cards that make sense. If you look what our turnaround levels right now, when we update the pricing over the course of the next 2 weeks and we put out our new turnaround rates, like when we submit a card now, we're submitting every week. We're not doing once a month submissions. So if you want to send us a high-end card, say we're going to have it back. Everything that's going to be express and above, it's going to be under that we'll have it back to you in 3 weeks. We'll have some of them back in 2 weeks. Right. So if you want to submit through us and you don't want to have to think about customs, then we'll get the cards. It's just going to keep getting quicker and quicker and quicker. So
for sure. So let me get a couple questions here. So first one, Josh, is the PSA app hooked up directly with Card Ladder? Not to my knowledge right now. I know currently it's not, but that is definitely, again, not inside information, just common sense. Since they acquired Card Ladder, I know from listening to reading interviews and listening to that PSA podcast we talked about, the one from Collectors, they 100% want to integrate some of this stuff. They want to, like, you bought this company that does pricing data. You want to integrate this information into your because they've already got an app, and already right by having that app, it's actually very handy for certain scenarios. It makes all the sense in the world to integrate some of that data. And I can imagine, and this is where in the last episode, the most recent one from today, there was a little mention that as part of the Collectors Club thing, they're talking about incorporating some more perks that come as part of being a Collectors Club member. Do not be shocked. Again, not inside information. I have to specify, not inside information. Do not be shocked if that isn't if a Card Ladder membership or some kind of an integration is not incorporated into that, because it would only make sense as a value add. It would make 100% sense. Why wouldn't you do that as a way of monetizing and using the property you have as well? Just from a business perspective, it makes sense.
Totally. So
going here, Casey Tex. Does PSA provide any sort of grade justification report? No. If not, should they? You can make the argument. And to talk about, again, this is not a collector's owned podcast. PSA Canada works closely with collectors, but we can speak on matters of other graders and things. There are new players in the space who are offering grade reports. So it would make sense to at least look at it. It's one of those things where it would not shock me if they're at least considering it, if the possibility isn't there. We know today that the slabs already have QR codes in them. And we know that some of those other players use a QR code to connect to a population report, to connect to a grading report. So if such a thing was to be made possible, you wouldn't have to change anything really about the slab necessarily. You could just incorporate it into the existing QR code and just attach it to, again, you've also got an app. You could incorporate some information in there as well. And you've got a lot of this, here we'll use the buzzword. You got a lot of the synergies already built in where you've got the pieces already in place where if you connect the right wires together, all of a sudden something like that becomes possible. Not something I'm going to promise you because it's not my call, but it would probably make sense if you were to make it available. The pieces are in place to try.
Yeah, and I always suggest too. My thoughts on that is, I mean, we would all love to see the reason why. I mean, especially on high end. But I feel at some point is, especially on the higher end service levels, an explanation would be key. Mm-hmm. And again, you're paying for that service level. So I don't know if it would be at Express or walkthrough, but definitely at the premium level, if you're spending $1,000, $2,000 a card, it would be nice to know that. I mean, again, that's just my personal take on it. And from my standpoint, dealing with customers, when you get something back and you just can't figure it out, there's something must be there. What's the reason behind it? It does make it hard. I mean, every day I deal with customers. I talked to a gentleman today that's been in the hobby for a long time, and he's not very happy with the grades that he got back on his cards. But the more we talked, after about a half hour, he's going to send in another submission. And I told him, look, send it to me. I'll go over your whole submission for you. Sure. I'm just giving you my personal thoughts on it. I'll let you know what I think. Say, here's what it's going to be, in my opinion. And we can go from there. And I that's a service that I want to offer people. I mean, it's very hard for us to look at every card, especially some of the newer stuff and TCG cards. It's a simple too time consuming. We would never be able to do it. But especially if people that are just starting and they want to, just don't submit direct. Get someone to look at your cards, whether it be us at PSA Canada or other group submitters or other companies. Make sure before you submit your cards to a grading company, if you are new to it, that you have someone look over and make sure you're doing things right. That's one of the biggest purposes of this podcast, and that was our number one objective when me and Carlos talked. I mean, from a business standpoint, but as collectors, we really want to dive in to explain to people, okay, here's what you should and shouldn't do when it comes to grading. And all these little things make a difference. Like, it's just, and some things that we think is just common sense. I had a box from a gentleman that came in, last week, and it was a FedEx box, and it was a big, the big white box, and inside everything was rattling, and I was like, huh. And so I went over to Lens, and he goes, yeah, maybe we should video this when we open it up, just because something's not right in here. And I'm like, for sure. Yeah. So we video it, and we open up the box, and inside was 10 one touches they didn't have any tape on them. They didn't have anything. They were just put in the box. So they came all the way from Ontario down to us, and I opened up. Fortunately, nothing was wrong. None of them were damaged. They were 10 cards, all valued at a couple grand a piece. I took them out. I looked at them, and I called the guy, and he's like, oh, did I do something wrong? I was like, no. I just want to let you know, like, next time, just group them together. But again, he didn't even think about it. He went to FedEx, he threw them in a box, and he sent them to us. Yep. It seems to us like it's common sense, but there's a lot of things that people just don't know what to do. So.
Yeah. And I'll say one thing pertaining to that, because Brad and I have talked about this, where one of the videos we would like to create is a video talking about some tips on putting together a package to ship. And by the way, that video would be useful for submitting to PSA Canada. It'd be useful for submitting to another third-party grade. It'd be useful to submitting in an eBay auction that somebody paid you money for these cards. Just shipping, some shipping understanding, some shipping tips. Because the one thing you don't want, as in the example that Brad just gave, is you don't want stuff rattling around. And putting stuff in one touches, you can do it. I've done it as well. But you do want to be extremely careful, because sometimes a card can move around a little bit in the one touch. And if the one touch somehow pops open and the card flies out, now it's not good times. So that you do want to be exceedingly careful when you choose to do some of that. Like, there's some stuff that, again, feels like it should be common sense. Longtime collectors will have it. But people would be shocked how many people are like, they're not even thinking about that, because FedEx, I get stuff shipped by FedEx all the time, but they're not always very gentle. I've gotten the packages where the box looks like the side of it got kicked, but fortunately they insulated and put it in the middle of the box so that there was a little bit of room for. So I looked at the box, and it's like, that's not encouraging. I pop it open and everything was fine, because they took care to package it well. So it applies to everything, for everybody. So I want to go out here from Eric. What's the policy of PSA and PSA Canada if the unthinkable happens and a card that is submitted is lost or damaged?
Yeah, so we've never had a card lost. We have had some cards that have been damaged. in the grading process. And PSA has completely refunded for the declared value of the card. So I think, I don't know if I told this story before, but we had a Patrick Mahomes silver that was going to be graded an 8. It got dinged just ever so slightly in encapsulation. They notified me and they said, look, would you like us to encapsulate it with the new grade? So the declared value at the time, the guy declared the value at $800. It was really probably like a $2,500, $3,000 card.
Yeah.
He declared the value at $800. It was a silver Prism Mahomes at the time. And so what they did, and again, I can speak from this one experience, they refunded the $800 and they sent, I called them up. I said, your card was an 8. It's now a 7. You're also not paying the grading fee and you're getting your full declared value on the card back. So he was extremely, he was happy. he got $800 US and away he went. So in all my experiences with PSA, once it's proven that they did, or if they let us know that they did it, but if it's something that they didn't catch and I went back, I'm batting 1,000 right now with them, and they've always stepped up to the plate and delivered. So you're fully protected. Same thing, if the card's in our possession and something happens to it, you're fully insured for the declared value while it's in our possession or in PSA's possession and to and from. So.
Yep. But that's why the declared value is crucially important. We talked about earlier tonight the kind of keeping that in the back of your mind when you decide to choose when you want to submit something or not. And like I said, we'll try to be as transparent, as honest as we can. That's why a couple of questions, we'll touch on some of the other ones. Even the grading report one, like obviously PSA doesn't have it, but we're seeing folks in the market. By the way, competition in the market is good because it does motivate folks to get these ideas and think it through. One thing I'll say though, and we just have to be honest about this, is that the larger companies in the space are going to be slower in integrating some of these elements because a lot of it would make total sense to us. And in a smaller organization, you snap your fingers and you go. Well, with the amount of people, the amount of locations, the amount of things we're talking about, there's stuff on the roadmap that is like, yeah, the idea's already been thought through. They're even working out exactly how to do it, or they've already decided, yeah, we're going to do it. Q3 2023. So it's like it's in the pipeline, and they've even like agreed. The budget's been set, everything's been done, but it takes out. It's like moving the Titanic instead of moving a motorboat. It's a lot easier to move a motorboat. It's more nimble. When somebody gets started, they can change course midway, and we've seen this in the space in reality. When CSG started up their business, they're not a small business, but they started up in a short order of time, and they made a change to their label. They were able to do it relatively early because they had only graded X number of cards. They made a decision. They made a change. Somebody who's been in the business longer can't suddenly just randomly switch. It's a little bit tougher for them to do. So it's the difference between the motorboat and the luxury liner. Oh, sorry. Here, let me get this one. Do you accept PSA DNA submissions?
Yeah, not yet, but that is in the very near future. And PSA DNA is going to, as we continue to work on them, have a strong presence in Canada. Also with, hopefully, if things go the right direction, with WADA video games. Again, they don't have a presence right now in Canada, and that's something that we're working with. Again, it's new to me. I own a few. I actually got a few in the background. I was never a big video game guy, but I think I'd like to have a WADA graded every hockey game that has ever.
I was about to say, so when are we getting? I think you've already got it, but it's like, so do we get our WADA graded Blades of Steel?
Yeah,
NHL '94.
Absolutely.
Yeah, may as well, right? So KKB Collectibles. One thing I've learned is that the things that you learn along the way that make total sense, 99% of the people submitting have no idea, no experience with. Very true. And a lot of it is teaching as you go. Yes. That's why a lot of this is really, let us not assume. It is better for us to not assume. And hopefully, as we go along, can you give us, the reason I ask about the comments thing is because number one, it helps engagement, it helps the channel, it helps all those things. Let's be honest about that. The like button also helps, just to mention, and subscriptions, subscribe button. But all those things help. But the other thing it does also is that sometimes maybe we haven't thought of it. Today, I had the topic I wanted to talk about some of the criteria and reasons why you would grade or not grade. That's a good open topic and lets us talk about it a little bit. But maybe there's something on your mind, something generally on your mind that you'd like to know about, and maybe it's a good topic for an episode, and we can spend some time talking about it. Happy to do it. And it can be more broadly hobby related. It can be related to third-party grading a little bit as well. We are collectors. We're happy to talk about hobby. Lord knows I do. A little bit. But but we can do it. The point is we can definitely have that discussion, and hopefully if it provides some value, that's better for everybody in the long run. Happy to have that discussion. So let's go here with the next one. I know Darren asked Sherry for comments, so they're going back and forth, so that's perfect. Like I said, you can ask for status updates. Feel free to do so, and then Sherry will respond to you there. What is your opinion on the new grading companies that have popped up? So we did touch on that a little bit here. And the survival chance of the small ones is the large guys ramp up and lower prices. So we've definitely got a number of them. So there are a couple of examples here given. HGA, FCG. FCG I'm not familiar with. Tag, in single quotation marks, etc. Okay. So I am going to predominantly defer. Brad, I cede the floor to you, please.
I mean, I do believe that competition is good in any space, but I really do look at the big. I guess I'll say the big four companies that are out there that have this kind of, CSG obviously with their background and everything else they do. I consider them, Beckett, SGC, and PSA as kind of the four predominant players in the space. Which I think will be around for a long time. I don't think they're going anywhere. I wish everyone success that comes into the space, and there's a lot of new things that are coming that I simply don't understand. If all these new companies can do some of the things that they claim they can do, and I guess we'll see in the future where they're at. But again, until I see things where they're going, regardless, I'm a lifelong PSA guy, and the proof is in the pudding, I guess you can say, based upon the market values of your cards. And I love the cases. I love everything to do with it. So.
Sure. So I will interject a couple of 2 cents, and I'll be very nice.
See, it's hard. That's where I'm not I don't want to say I'm the best at. That's for sure. I say what I mean, and I want to be. What I'm saying is the truth, and that's how I feel.
Sure.
But again.
Yeah, I just want to make a distinction, because this is one of the things that Brad and I talked about when we conceived of this show, is that I make a distinction between this and what I do on my own YouTube channel. Some of you who are here are familiar with that, so you'll notice the tenor of the conversation is a little bit different, because we're in a space of business here, virtual business, so to speak. So we're going to present it a different way, and I'm going to keep it a little bit more light and kind of open ended, and a little bit more tongue in cheek and fun. But at the same time, we can still have conversation on it. My thought process is competition in the space is good. I agree 100% with what Brad said. I feel we've got 4 viable players in the space. Market values and everything will fluctuate. Obviously, that's a conversation you can have. 100%, I get it. But that over time, that has moved a little bit. It wasn't always the way it is today, and the ranking can shift and move over time, and each of these companies would have an opportunity. One of the things that I do appreciate about some of those other players in the space is that if they do come up with good ideas and can come up with interesting implementations of it, truthfully, some of the bigger players may just steal the idea, which in the long run is not a terrible thing. I use the example of one of the 4 regular players. I use the example of SGC. They changed their authentics so that they were more specific about what the alteration was or what the situation was with the card. I don't think that's a bad idea. I think it's a good way of telling the collector, hey, this is the specific issue. This card is trimmed. This card has been recolored, whatever the case may be. I don't think that's a terrible idea. I think that's a decent idea. And I wouldn't mind if PSA stole that. I wouldn't mind if some of the other ones stole that. I'd be glad if they all did it. I think that's good in the long run for the consumer, for the collector. I think that's good for everybody. I think it's also good, like a grading report would be nice to have. And I don't think it's a bad idea at all. And if they could incorporate it into what they have today, I gave you the example of the QR code. So like the pieces are in place where under the right circumstances, if they could do it, if PSA could do it, if SGC could do it, if CSG could do it, if Beckett could do it, that would be awesome, because then that's a win for the industry. So in the long run, that's a good thing. If any of this automated stuff is able to help out with some of these things, it's good. PSA acquired Geniment. Part of what they're doing is the whole fingerprinting of cards. There are elements of that are being mentioned in some of these other players that you mentioned in your examples. So it's not like these companies aren't trying to incorporate some of these elements. Execution will be the key. How well they can do it will be the key. But some of the existing players will be more conservative. I can guarantee you they will be more conservative. They'll be a lot slower to it. A new player in the market needs to distinguish itself. So they will be right at the front of it. Hey, we got to tout our new technology, because otherwise, why would you try us? If you're already using this other one, we need to give you a reason. So we're going to throw everything in the kitchen sink out of it. Some of it's going to work, and some of it may not. And I think that's the most high level way that I could present that to you. Sound good?
Yep.
I can be professional sometimes.
Absolutely. That was a great job. I will say this too. Anyone that does listen to this and wants to go on, if you want some highly entertained value with an educational factor about the hobby, join Because I Am Carlos on Friday nights. It's I jump on as a guest, and I truly enjoy it. there's a great group of guys and girls that comment, and it's very enjoyable. And yeah.
And I do appreciate that, but to be clear, that is not a place of business. It is a
Right.
very different level of decorum. That's why I want to be 100% clear on the distinction. A very different level of decorum. You are forewarned.
Absolutely.
So PSA DNA, now you're talking my game. Good stuff. Hopefully we can incorporate that, and that'll be good for everybody. Indigenous Rookie Cards, name. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Hey, guys. First time during the live. Appreciate you joining in, name. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Eric is paying for it this time around, too. Very exciting. All right, Hockey 99. Brad, do you require a certain volume from a person, i.e. minimum 10 cards? If I wanted to bulk submit you, you can do 1 card. Perfectly fine. Yep, one card is fine. And the price is still going to be the same. And if you're a super high, I think, Brad, if you're a super high volume, you do get a couple more options available to you. But as a regular submitter, 1 card, 10 cards, 5 cards, doesn't matter.
Yep, and the same thing. And we do on local pickup, and we adjust shipping rates accordingly. So
absolutely,
which is nice.
So KC Techs, any subgrading plans in the future? So again, company operating from the outside, we can speculate. I would be very surprised if that was incorporated into the existing slab. I would be very surprised. That would surprise me. Now, if that grading report idea ever came to pass, I could totally see the report containing some of those details that may give you some of that information. One point that I've always made about the PSA scale relative to, and again, whether it's your preferred version or not, I'm not going to judge on that. I leave everybody to their own. I can only give you the experience that I have. I believe that it is going to be very difficult at this stage, 30 years in the game, and probably in the realm of maybe about 30 million cards graded. You cannot mess with the scale too much. I used CSG as an example earlier tonight, and I gave them as an example because they are a company that has history in the space. But as a sports card grading company, and obviously they do collectible card games as well and different cards, but because they created their CSG product recently, they were able to do the adjustment to the label, but they also made an adjustment to the scale, which with the amount that they had actually graded, they had a little bit of flexibility to do. So their scale is actually in line with what SGC's scale is today. So they were able to do that. But PSA is in this position, and this is why I've said to folks that it would be very difficult for PSA to incorporate a black label 10, so to speak, only because there is a written standard. And it's not that it's a bad idea. And this is why I say we give a certain amount of transparency that is interesting considering the logo we're wearing. We can give more transparency than most. It's not that it's impossible, but if you did it, the challenge that you would have is, what do you do with every 10 that already exists? How do you then reconcile the fact that you had these 10s under a certain standard, and then even if you say, okay, well, we'll have a nicer version of it, well, you're going to have a bunch of folks with existing 10s who are then going to almost be pressured to be like, so is your 10 the really good 10? Or is your 10 like it meets the standard 10? Because there's a little bit of room in that standard. Not a good thing or a bad thing. It's like I'm being neutral on this, but I'm saying that it would make it tricky to adjust the scale. And the subgrades would also be kind of an issue like that. But on a grading report, I could definitely see it being viable if you incorporate it separately with something like that, but not necessarily on the slab. Does that make sense, Brad?
Yep, no, absolutely. Summed it up great. And that's answering that question as well. I don't think there will be anything in the near future. Definitely not. In the future, who knows? Things are evolving, just like Carlos said. But in the near future, I don't think. I think Nat Turner has said it's not something that they're looking at doing. That's a big change. So Carlos summed it up well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, 100%.
Yep.
Hashtag scholarship. Love it, Josh. Thank you. Yes, Eric, you are. Your sponsorship extends to the like buttons around the multiverse. I hope you've been saving up your pennies. It's very important. So Peter says, submitting one is fine, but round trip shipping is like $90. Yes. So it's one of those things where the shipping, there's only so much you can do with the shipping because a lot of things are incorporated into it. So just to summarize, what's included in the shipping price currently?
So right now, shipping, if you ship one card, it's $65. That includes shipping to PSA, insured shipping to PSA and back to us, and then it includes overnight shipping via UPS back to you. So this is something that we're working with a national company right now. Everyone in Canada in the next month or two is going to have some very good options, regardless if you're selling on a platform, if you're using eBay. It's such an uneven playing field we have with the US for our shipping rates with Canada Post versus USPS. You can if you use USPS on eBay, you can provide tracking on the shipping for $1. and ship a
It's
card.
not great. It's not great tracking, to be fair. I've definitely used it. It's not great tracking, but it is tracking. Yes.
Exactly. So like
Yes.
we're going to have something that's going to bring down. I think now if you want to send a tracking in Canada with Canada Post, it's $12 or $13, whatever that is.
It's thereabouts, yeah.
Yeah, we're working on something really good. So our shipping rates with PSA Canada in the near future, I'd say in 2022, are going to be reduced significantly, which is going to help people out a lot. So we try to do that, but we have some packages like when we ship to BC or the other thing with UPS, if it goes rural, I wasn't even paying attention the other day. We shipped one card to a person back, and it was $82 Canadian. So on that card, if we made a couple bucks, we charged $65 shipping. It cost me 82. I was net out $15 for offering that service. They lived. It was in rural. It was outside. It was outside of Brandon, Manitoba, where we shipped it to. Anyways, but again, we dropped them off at UPS. I wasn't paying attention, and that's very rare that does happen. But I'd like to be able to have a shipping rate that includes insured shipping to the U.S. and back for half of what, and back to you for half of what we are charging now. So that's a big thing that we're working on, and that you'll see that very, very soon.
Sounds good. And hopefully that'll be good news. That's one of those costs that are kind of built into almost anything where you have to ship something, especially if you have to insure it and like that. Anybody who does do regular shipping of any items or cards, even if I do just an eBay sale and I have to send it to the States and I want to include tracking and everything, my different costs are high to begin with, and I have to kind of work around that and understand that going into the very thing. So let me go in here. Hockey 99. Do you ever see a time when it'd be a waste of money for submitting a Panini Gold out of 10 card? Let's assume the card is not a future Hall of Famer. It could be right now if the card doesn't hold enough value for you. That was kind of so Hockey 99. I would suggest for the value proposition thing. Earlier in the episode, we talk about where it would make sense or not to submit a card. It's a math problem. Like for that kind of a scenario, it's a math problem because you're basically saying, okay, this is how much it's going to cost me to grade. Assuming if it's for personal collection, maybe it's not a waste of money at all. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe you don't care. You really like the card. Well, then submit it. Great. But if it's something where you're hoping to get some value out of it, maybe you're planning on selling or whatever the case may be, well then, okay. So what do you think you can get out of it? Price X. How much is it going to cost you to do it? Price Y. What's the gap between X and Y? That's your answer. Either it's worth it or it's not.
Yeah.
And that's for any card. Doesn't matter. It can be that one or anything else. Here's a fun one. Would you ban someone for submitting to PSA Canada if they tried to submit a Leaf Auto, like a fake card? Well, if you're doing it knowingly, that's different than if it just comes back, unauthenticated. But Brad, please.
Yeah, we submit a lot of Leaf cards for grading.
Yeah,
I got a bunch today in a package. So
yeah, for the most part, like I laugh because I was asked because there was that controversy with the Leaf Pele autograph and everything, and I was asked flat out, what do you think about Leaf cards? Just in general, what do you think about Leaf cards? Because I was posting some wrestling cards on my Instagram and stuff, and I was like, the Leaf wrestling cards, the Leaf cards in general. What are you asking about? And it was like, oh, just in general. I said, well, I think they make some nice cards. I think some of them are very. I've got them in my collection. I don't have any issue with that. If you're uncomfortable with something that they're producing, though, then I would say avoid it. It's not for everybody. And I think the challenge with the sticker autographs is that they do sometimes source them. So this is a challenge for anything where you got sticker autographs. If one of your representatives is watching the person sign it, flat out, point blank, that's one thing. It's another thing, though, if you basically send them a big sheet of stickers and ask them to sign, and they send them back to you, and you're hoping that the person that you are paying to sign it is the one who signed it, and you're kind of hoping for the best. So it's one of those things where you do have to be careful with it. That's a spat that those guys will have to bounce back and forth amongst themselves. I kind of stay out of it. I'm in the Ken Golden camp where I have my popcorn. That's my stance on this.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think it'd be cool though. Like some of the cards that Leaf has produced. Someone talked about it. I think it might have been on your show, Carlos. But the Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan.
Yeah, you can put together these weird combinations that wouldn't make sense otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah, and could you imagine if you had like an on-card auto of both of them, so they both had to have the card? That would be super cool. It's kind of. I remember the story that Brian Enroth, the CEO, the president of Frameworth, told me one time about Ryan Miller, the goalie, will not sign a dual picture of Crosby coming down and Ryan Miller when he scored the golden goal.
Right.
So that just doesn't exist. Ryan Miller will. It's a bad moment for Ryan Miller. He will not sign that picture, ever. So that was one of the things that there's a lot of little intricate things that happen in the hobby that are pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think one of those things that's kind of interesting in that vein is that, and And this is something that has legitimately been a thing that Leaf has the capacity to do, but again, for only a certain period of time, they still have stickers with Gordie Howe autographs. So it does allow them to create duels and trio cards with other Hall of Famers potentially who are around who can sign new and combine it with a Gordie Howe. So it does allow you to do that. So that's one of those things you definitely can do, which is not available to other card companies if they don't happen to have Gordie Howe stickers available. So as long as they last, they can potentially do that. So you can still have Gordie Howe autographs in future products, even though Gordie Howe's not around with us anymore. But again, when those stickers run out, that's the end of that. That's the end of that resource. Yannick here says, I would ban and upcharge people that submit an upside down one touches. It's a big problem. It is true. There are some ne'er-do-wells out there who do that kind of thing. And Hockey 99, it's like, no, you can ask for an update. That's kind of the point. Now, the question, though, is will there be a status tracking system coming out in the future? We've touched on that a little bit, but any thoughts on where that's coming along? Is that still in progress? Something being worked on?
We will definitely have that in place by the end of the year.
Yeah. And it'll be, I think it's going to be related to the numbers that are associated to the specific orders to allow people to go and look it up and kind of see where their orders are in status-wise.
Yeah, exactly. And we will get to the point at some point with the working relationship with PSA that you'll be able to see your numbers right through their website. That's where we're working for. So,
yep. So let's take a look here. So here's a question: if I submit a card to PSA and they have trouble removing the card from the card saver, be interested to see what kind of a card you put in the card saver if they have trouble removing it. They slap a sticker on it and don't grade the card. Do they refund the grading cost of the card in the case? So the first part of it, I'll be honest, the whole point of a card saver is the ease of being able to remove it from the card. So I'd be curious what kind of card you put in there, what super glue you put in there to keep it. That's the point of the card saver. But if for whatever reason they don't grade the card for some reason like this, because there are some scenarios like this where they won't grade the card. That is a thing. What's the policy then on the grading cost?
So I've never faced that, but if they couldn't get the card out of the card saver, I'm sure there would be no charge.
I think the scenario, though, that I think would be more likely, because I've seen this with other third-party graders as well, is it could be a situation where they don't have a holder appropriate for the card. Like, that's a thing that happens.
Yeah,
well,
I was opening up boxes tonight and we were getting more orders out, and there was a bunch of no holder. So it just says no holder on it. So there's no charge for that service. So same as min size, if it doesn't meet the minimum size requirement, there's no charge for that service as well.
So that's why I say there are some scenarios where they will not grade a card. And the holder one is an example where, like, technically nothing is wrong per se. It's just they don't have a holder that would hold the card, and therefore they're not going to then charge you for it because they can't encapsulate it. So that would be an issue.
Yeah, and it's a learning. I'm still learning. We had a gentleman that submitted a 51 Parkhurst the winning goal card, and it came back encapsulated just as authentic. And we're trying to figure out exactly what does that mean, because it didn't say authentic altered, it just said authentic. Mm-hmm. And when I put the forms through on anything vintage, I write down, I thought it might have been my fault, because I put at the bottom of the form, if a card does not receive a numerical grade, please encapsulate as authentic or authentic altered, because people were getting cards back that just weren't good enough for a 1, and they just come back, but they just wanted authenticated and they wanted it in the PSA slab. Right. So I started to write that at the bottom. So I said, maybe this is the point where did they do that for a min size card? So I sent the email actually today to get the exact answer. And again, every day there's something. When you get a lot of cards back, there's always something that throws you for a loop. And you can try to read and figure out exactly what happened. But I don't know on this card. I'm thinking that might be the case, that they encapsulated it. But then if you look at NO in the description, it could be altered. So I'm confused by that, but I'm going to have an answer. So,
all right, sounds good. As long as you can get some clarity, that'd be good to know. So let me grab a couple of these questions here. Casey Tex, what's your take on hard-signed autos being sold without authentication? This is more of an open-ended kind of collector question. Some thoughts on this one?
Yeah, what's your take?
Yeah, hard-signed autos being sold without authentication.
I think it depends on who it is. Mm-hmm. Like I always say, if you see a Johnny Bauer autograph, or if you're looking, the odds are that it's a legitimate autograph. So, what do you need to have a COA with that? And also where you're buying it from, who you're buying it from, and what's the story behind it.
Yeah, you have to buy the seller. In that situation, you're buying the seller, you're buying the reputation, you're buying what they've done before, because even a certificate of authenticity is only worth the paper it's printed on. It's one of those things. There are certain companies that specialize in this. There's certain companies where, and I'll give you an example. One of the ones that I've done business with in the past is Frozen Pond out here, because they used to do signings all the time. So I've done signings with them where I've gotten stuff in person and I get the certificate, and I've done ones where I've mailed in the item and basically left it, and it's been signed and it's been back. But it's been players that I already have autographs for. So I can kind of look at the two beside each other and go comparison one to the other, and pretty comfortable. Like the one right up here, that's Frozen Pond. So that's a 16 by 20, and it basically matches up with other ones I've got in the collection already. So it's one of those things. It's not far off what I would expect to see, and I've gotten hand signed in person, and it's like it's pretty much the same signature all the time within normal tolerances.
That was a great pointing job. You went right at it.
Oh, I'm a pro, buddy. I'm a pro.
It's not easy.
I'm watching it from the monitor, and I can still do it. So I believe, Hockey Barn Collectibles, I believe they cut the card savers down side to remove the card so as not to pull on it. That I've heard this. This is one where this falls under what happens to the semi-rigid holders, and that's a mystery we're actually asking about to get the specifics. This would not surprise me though, because again, the whole point of the semi-rigid is to give you space so the card isn't crammed tightly in there. It's presumably to make it easier. But it would make more sense to do that and give yourself an easier path to get to the card as opposed to reach in and potentially ding the card several different ways. You want to avoid that. That's the whole point, is to avoid that entirely.
You know what? We'll make sure we can answer that for next show.
Sounds good. So Ryan Daw here. And this is more of an AMG Collectibles question, so I think this is a good one. Thoughts on having high-value cards in a showcase at a store for security reasons? Any discomfort with that, or what is your kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think obviously, I think it depends on where your store is located too. That's one of the big things. Like we have our store, AMG Collectibles, and we're in a mall that has 24-hour security. We're not a storefront on the outside. We're on the interior of the mall, so we feel a lot safer with that. I know when we had our store on Roby Street, right at the corner of the intersection, I always said someone could just drive their car right through the window, and it was the ideal spot for a smash and grab or whatever. Like it could have happened, and I was stressed even with an alarm. What are you going to do at that? But I think when I was at the industry summit last year, they did a whole thing on security, and there was a lot of things taken away, and I'd be happy to share that with you, Ryan. I think I actually have a clip. There was a guy from the FBI that did a full thing on store security, and there's a lot of little things that, again, back to you think like, hey, I know how to secure my building, but there was a lot of little things that he suggested to do that you kind of just you just take for granted sometimes. You don't think about it. Like don't have your high-end cards on the top shelf, have them on the middle shelf. Just something that makes perfect sense, you know what I mean? But most people want to put them on the top shelf because they want to show them off. There's a lot of things that you can do, but I think I still have that, Ryan. I can flip that over to you for sure. Nice. It was nicely done.
Yeah. You ever think there could be a situation where if the prices ever escalated again further, because obviously we had a big run up in 2020 and 2021. You ever think if the prices went up high enough, we could ever end up in a situation where the store becomes like a high-end jewelry store? Like, have you ever been to the ones with the very, very large security doors, the big metallic security door, and then the security guy on the inside kind of buzzing you in? It's like, is that where we're going to wind up here when we get our Mahomes patches, our triple logo man? You want to see the triple logo man? Hold on. One security door stuck in the middle, other security door.
Yeah. You know what? In the world we live in today, I just read earlier today, this afternoon, about Rogers stores. So to enter a Rogers store, not all stores, before you can get in the store, you need to provide photo identification before you can enter the store to shop. It just got announced officially, and I just was like, oh, geez. And they're saying, yeah, it's due to the amount of fraud and the amount of robberies. So they started to do that. So you can see it. Obviously, you want to protect your stuff, but I mean, there's literally, I think there's people that have showcases that are worth more than a lot of the jewelry stores. That's for sure.
Yeah, but that's the reason why I use that analogy. I go, with the price, the escalating prices, some of the stuff in the inventory that some of these dealers are doing, that would be very entertaining to me. If we reach the point where we did do the high-end jewelry store variant with the security doors and everything. So Ryan's other question here is personally submitted a McDavid buyback directly through Beckett. They wouldn't grade it without the COA. Yeah, there are different policies with some of that. And I think Hockey is slowly trying to give you his identity. Said Brad had tougher customers at the Toothy Moose than he did at Bedford Place Mall. Interesting.
Yeah.
The mystery deepens. All right, so this next one here is a question. So, can someone explain to me what the Sept registry is? I never bothered to learn about it, only submitted cards to PSA Canada for grading, nothing more, nothing less. It is exactly what it sounds like. It is a registry of different cards, sets, and themes. Also themes is a big one. Basically, they created a list of cards that you can collect, and basically you can use your graded PSA cards to submit towards these different sets. Once you submit one, then somebody else can't use the exact same card for their set unless you basically release it to them. So the idea is you can build up these sets and find out who has the finest set in the land and compete against your friends and enemies and frenemies.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You should honestly, anyone that's listening should go check it out. It's if you're a collector, it's very cool to go through some of the sets and see what does exist out there, and some of the guys that are accumulating some incredible collections.
And also, they do have an app. So just to be clear, they do have an app. And on it right now, I have the 7th finest Mike Modano rookie collection set registry. There are 9 cards in it. So you basically need all 10s to get tied for the top. just to be clear. But the only reason I'm 7th is because I'm still missing 2. Otherwise, I'd be tied for first. So anyway, but that is a thing. That's how tight a theme can be. It is not just Mike Modano. It is Mike Modano rookie cards, 9 of them. So it lists what they are. So as you get them, you can scan them and say, okay, I've got the Bowman. Okay, I've got the Upper Deck. Okay, I've got the Upper Deck French, the Opecia Premier, the Opecia, et cetera, et cetera. So it lists them off. So that's one set I'm doing. 1957 Topps Green Bay Packers team set. That is 12 cards. So I've got 11 of those 12. So then as you can go along, and you can upgrade the set to move up, and they've got points and all kinds of... Again, it's for guys who have nothing better to do to spend money and compete against each other and brag about how their collection is better.
Yeah. And I like, too, when you look and then when you see none higher, when you're going through the set registry, and it's just right. I love it. The 66 top set that I've been working on for 20 years. I have a few PSA 9s and I got a few PSA 10s and 9s that it's the highest ones. And it does. It kind of gives that little feeling where it's like, there's nothing better than my 1966 Topps PSA 10 Ron Ellis.
Now, I will say for the really competitive folks, for some of the bigger sets and stuff, because there's a whole bunch of categories. They actually have awards. So if you are the highest, in a lot of these categories, they do have an awards. So like I said, these guys are competitive. And the guys at the top end are ruthless. They will spend good money for a common that improves their set in the set registry. That's how ruthless it is. It's madness. Truly, it's madness. So fair enough. Let's go in here. Reopen Toothy Moose. There you go. Got the hashtag open in there. I like it.
It's open. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay. So how do you know if a PSA graded card is part of a set registry? As soon as you scan it and you try to add it to yours, it'll give you an indicator. And it'll give you a chance to email somebody and say, hey, remove it from yours, because somebody can sell it on eBay. It was in their registry. They sell it on eBay, and then you shoot them a quick message. And after a certain period of time, if they don't respond, you can say, hey, I can prove I have the card, and you basically just prove you have the card, and then they'll drop it off of theirs and put it on yours. Otherwise, the person can say, yeah, go ahead, release it, and then it just gets sent over to you. I've had that where I bought the card and it's sent over to me. Which two am I missing? Opecia and Topps. So the two similar looking cards, those are the last two. I picked up the Bowman last week because I wanted to add it. So right now I've got all 10s. 7 and 9 are on 10s because, again, they're inexpensive enough. There's no point in getting 9s on those. Just get the 9 10s.
With the Bowman,
Tiffany doesn't count as part of it. It's not part of it.
Gotcha.
I want to get the Tiffany because I think that would be awesome, but they're considering the base cards. They just say the base card is all they're counting for those.
Yeah.
But the Tiffany to me would be those are both fun ads. I want to get the Bowman Tiffany and I want to get the Topps Tiffany because I think that'd be awesome to add as well.
Yeah.
So those are 2 I'm missing. Can you create a set registry after I bought cards? Yes. You can actually propose themes. You can propose set registry sets. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to do it, but you can ask. You can pose that question. Mm-hmm.
I think they'd be willing. Like if you build your case and you want to have interest in it, sure, they're going to help you out.
More than anything, they'll prioritize sets that they think people might be intrigued by. I'll give you a real good example. There was a book written by Mike Payne. It was like the 300 most important cards in the hobby or something. I actually have the book. The name escapes me though, the exact title. But it was this book. It was a beautiful coffee table book. I'll find it for next episode and I'll show it to you guys. But it's a beautiful coffee table book that talks about 300 cards that are significant. They're not all expensive. Some of them are actually inexpensive because they've got some junk wax era cards that the author Mike Payne just thought were neat, but they thought it was some of the nicest cards in the hobby. And there is a set registry that is those 300 cards. And some of them are super big. They're big time cards. 52 Topps Metal is in there. So big time cards, but they've also got some very interesting ones that might shock you, that might surprise you. And there was an article that Beckett did where they did like the top 80 cards of the 1980s in baseball cards. That is a set registry themed set. So they came up with, somebody actually proposed it. They said, hey, this article is written. Check this out. This is kind of cool. Sweet. So yeah, you can definitely have these themes. That is the thing that can happen. KKB Collectibles number 4 in the graded WotC Master Set for Pokemon. Look at you. Congratulations.
Nice.
Is the Dimitri Young collection a set registry? No, that is Providence.
That's good.
Yeah, they will do it. The thing is, they will do it in certain circumstances. They will do that kind of thing. And I can tell you that SGC has done that in the past also for certain collectors. And that 1952 tops SGC 9.5 was actually labeled highest known or finest known to give it the provenance with the Mr. Mint find. So sometimes you will get some provenance put on there, and coins do this as well, by the way. So it's just, this is it's not everybody is going to get that, but it is possible under the right circumstances to get that added on to the slip if there's a good reason for it and you can make a case.
I wonder if that card was submitted. What do you think if that card was submitted to PSA? What do you think?
I think if I remember from what I understand, it was held inside of a kind of a brick screw down. I think as long as the edges of it are fine, it didn't get pressed or compressed or anything. I think it's 10. As far as I'm concerned, it's a 10.
But don't you think if you had that card, you would submit it to PSA first?
It depends on the person who owned it, because they had owned it without grading it at all for decades. So they decided not to do it at all. So you'd have to get in their head what prompted them to do it. So there's two scenarios, right? You can be conspiratorial, or you can be, or you can just say they had a preference. Maybe they had a preference. By the way, thank you, Sherry. Subscribe and like. We want to get to the 100. We're so close. And the like button is always appreciated. Helps out the videos. Thank you, Sherry. But okay, if you want to be conspiratorial, you could say there was an issue that prevented them from sending it to PSA, and then they went with SGC as option 2. That's conspiratorial. I'm not going to go there. But the point is that is a theory that's out there. The second one is that for whatever reason he was encouraged to do it to SGC. My opinion is that card would sell well in any holder as long as it's graded well in the holder. The card aesthetically, eye appeal, it's got great eye appeal. That card was going to do great regardless. So it was going to be a record setter. In a PSA 10, it would have sold for more.
Yep.
But even though it'd be like but there's 4 of them. It's like, yeah, but it's a really good it's a good eye appeal copy. It would stand up very well and stack up well against some of the other ones. Right now, the most infamous one, if you want to talk about the Provenance thing, the Marshall Fogel copy, by the time it's all said and done, I'm sure they'll relabel it Marshall Fogel Collection. Because he's a very infamous dude in the hobby and has a great collection, just to be clear, has a great collection. He would warrant the Marshall Fogel Collection 52 tops mantle. It wouldn't shock me if they have that done.
Yeah,
it would not shock me.
I agree. I'm pretty sure that will happen for sure.
100%. Providence tagline coming soon. There you go. PSA Canada Providence. You getting some PSA Canada Providence in there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think there was a question earlier too about our presence at the expo. I will mention that this year we'll even have. We learned a lot over the last couple of years at the expo, and this year will be bigger and better. And we've got some really cool things. Cool things in the works for the booth, and I'm working directly with PSA on that. So we actually have some people coming up from PSA to be there with us, which will be very exciting for us, so they can see how we operate and we can make improvements as we go. But we got some great feedback, and we know the areas we have to improve upon, and we're going to do that. And also, for anyone that's listening now too, we have 95% of the cards are back from the expo. We have about 5% that are still there's always a few orders that just trickle in. Like we have one 80 card order that has a lot of different customers on it, which is holding back us invoicing because they have like one card because it's a dual economy order. Okay. So we have people that have 9 cards at economy, but they had one at dual service. So that's holding us from invoicing that. So we're going to reach out to those people over the weekend because our expected due date, the end of the show is June 8th. We said the expected due date for all economy was going to be September 8th back to us. And we're right on track for that. We've been getting the cards back for the last, at the economy level over the last 3 weeks. Yeah. So we've been getting them in. We've been getting them out as fast as we can. So all our June orders should be all done here in the next couple of weeks. So.
Nice. And part of your answer here also actually covered CC. By the way, CC, my apologies. Yours was right in between 2 comments. We went into a bit of a tangent on one, but you actually asked this question a couple of minutes ago, about half an hour, 40 minutes ago. So my apologies. I did remember it and came back to it. So less than 2 months of the expo. Are you ready? Any changes you'll be making at the show? So anything, new plans on what's happening with the show? Still gonna
Yeah,
have the AMG and the PSA Canada booths, the two of them going and
yeah,
everything.
completely separate. So AMG is going to be in our usual position that we've been for forever.
Yep.
Towards a friend. I've been talking with Steve Menzie about just kind of the floor plan and the setup. So
Mhm.
he's got some really cool things happening. This show is going to be awesome. I can't wait for it. So we will have a new setup. We're expanding. We're going to have some more staff there, and we're also going to have an area that we're going to be able to kind of communicate more with the people. We wanted to do that last time. And again, when it's hard when you have 50, 60 people lined up and everyone's staring and you're at the table in front, you want to give everyone the best customer service you can. So we're going to have an area on the side now that's going to be more an educational piece.
Mhm.
So you can bring your cards up. Like we have, I can't even imagine how many people I've talked to over the last 6 months that are bringing their cards in. I just talked to a girl today that has a 55 tops baseball set. She doesn't know what one she should grade out of it. She thinks she should. I said, absolutely. Bring it to us in November. I'll just take some time. We'll go through the set. Maybe you pull out the top 5 cards. You pull out the top 10 cards. Maybe just do 1 or 2 cards to start off. And that will give you a sense of an idea of what you have.
Mhm.
So I also tell people, pick out the card if you're ever looking at a set. Pick out the card that you think is in the nicest shape. Don't worry about the name on the card. Don't worry about who it is. Pick out the one that you think is the best centering, best surface, best everything. And then grade that one along with one of the star cards out of it. Because when you know that, then you can kind of see, oh, geez, that came back a 6. Then that's the best card that you thought was there. So it kind of, you learn from that process when you do it that way. So
Absolutely. And one other thing I'll add, and this is not something I'm committing to, but also I think it's something we'll talk. We'll talk offline a little bit more about it because, as I said, I want to incorporate more videos as well into this channel. And as part of that, I will be at the expo as well. But it's one of those things where, under the right circumstances, maybe we do a video or two related to the expo while we're there. And it'd be kind of fun to incorporate that in the channel because maybe we come across some cool stuff. It could be a situation where, even if it's for a couple of minutes, even if it's a couple of pictures, we could show some of the stuff that, some of the interesting stuff and crazy stuff that comes through, and we'll see. We'll make sure we got permissions and everybody's okay with it and everything. But it'd be kind of fun for people to actually see, like, this is what it's like. This is what's going on in the booth. Even if it's just setting up a camera in the back so people can just see the lines and people moving
absolutely.
around. We could definitely have some fun with that. So we'll talk about it some more and see what we can figure out.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's scroll through here. I want to say, scrolling down, I am almost there. Nobody's making insane cards graded by PSA videos. There are some people doing those videos for some of the other third-party graders. That is true. Imagine cracking the 9.5 to submit to PSA. You'd require some guts to do it. It would be a bold move. Maybe SGC paid the submitter to get pressed for the mantle. Again, we're in conspiratorial categories. Who knows? But they have their reasons, and it's one of those things. The only way to know for sure would be to ask them and hope they tell you the truth. That they got their reasons. So,
Yeah.
and in the end, they made good money on it. It's not like the card didn't perform well. It is the highest selling card of all time.
Yeah.
So for the moment, they did very well on it. Is that Dimitri Young, the baseball player? Yes, that is the Dimitri Young in question. So here, Brad, I know PSA Canada is expanding, but I'd rather submit to you than the friends of PSA Canada that charge extra for them in turn to send to you. Brad, I think you should offer him a bribe to find out who Hockey 99 is.
Yeah, I
That
will.
might be part of the video. Hockey 99 reveal.
It's my quest. I will figure it out someday. But
Right.
again, back to that as well. I don't want to keep on saying this, but group submitters are so important. If you're submitting, whether you submit directly to us or to a group submitter, you don't want to submit to a grading company by yourself unless you really understand the process. There's the advantages to guys to look at your cards, guys to wipe down your cards, to make sure they're submitted properly. To pay an extra few dollars to a group submitter is well worth it. Most of the time, you're going to save big dollars over shipping, is number one when you use a group submitter. And you're submitting it to a professional that's going to help you out. They're going to look and say, ask their opinion on it. Send them 20 cards and say, look, I'd like to send in 5 right now. Pick out my best 5, and I'm going to be a customer. And they'll help you out doing that. Like, we offer that as well. I said it's important. So.
Absolutely. And that's why I said I try to distinguish between, now, not all group submitters are going to be created equal. Not all of them are going to offer the same thing. You got to be careful with that because some of them charge for some of those elements. So I want to be clear that it's important that we make a distinction. The other piece of it that I said earlier is I use this word, and it's an appropriate word. you also do get an advocate on the other side of the transaction. It's not you having to try to deal with the monolith PSA. It's somebody that goes up, picks up the phone, and goes, "Hey guys, we need some answers on this. We need to know what's going on with this. Can you give us some more information?" And at least try to have somebody that can try to help you out with that a little bit. So Yannick says, "I know a good video guy now." It's true. Yannick is mastering the art of the video. He's getting there. And then name here. I like the educational piece, Brad. I've never been to an expo, so I don't know if it's done, but a submission seminar would be cool to see for new people. Absolutely. It would be nice. Like educational pieces, I think have tons of value. Tons of value.
Yeah, yeah. Like I always say, we just don't want someone to submit once to us. We want long time submitters, and if they get burned and they don't understand the process just by simply doing it wrong, they're not coming back. And there's a lot of cases that I have with people that they're not coming back, and I know that, right? So
absolutely. So why don't we start winding her down here? This has been our marathon episode so far. A light warm-up for me in traditional, but for our purposes, I think it's been good. And by the way, thank you all for the comments. It's been some really good comments and discussion this evening. We've been able to touch on a variety of different topics, and hopefully some of this has been useful to you. For folks to check it out on the replay, do feel free to put some comments in the comments section. We have read some of the comments, and we do go back and read the comments to try to help out and give as much information and details we can. We'll go backwards and help out with that as well. But it's one of those things, if you tell us that you're interested in hearing about X, there's a better chance we can do an episode where we'll talk about X. It's one of those things where if you give us that feedback, it goes, okay, people want to hear about this? Sounds good. Let's set up a discussion about it and talk about it. So we can definitely do that. Hockey 99 is as mysterious as the PSA grader. This is true. These are facts. Good stuff. So thank you all again for joining in. Thank you all for participating and giving some great comments and questions and everything. On your way out, if you could hit the like button, Eric has generously offered to once again sponsor it. It is free yet again, as is the subscribe button. His generosity is limitless. Sanderson or Eric is a very generous individual, and he helps us out once again. Once again. Sounds good. So, with that said, for Brad and myself, thank you all again for joining us. We'll be back next Thursday again, 9 p.m. Eastern time, same as this week. And then down the road, like I said, there'll be some more videos coming up on the channel. So do subscribe and follow along. Hit the little bell icon. You'll get a notification when another episode is coming up. And we'll put a little placeholder ahead of time so you'll know when the next episode is coming. All right? Have yourself a great night.